Welcome to Doc's Lab and our second Master Series. Welcome to Doc's Lab and our second Master Series. I do believe that this is the 112th video in our second Master Series, the 61st video in basic processors, the 24th video in sculpting processors, and the first video on working with harmonics. And this is our introduction video. Basically what we want to talk about in this introduction is that when we're working with harmonics, that we're normally working with a sound that is moving around in the spectrum. So it's not static in one area. So most of the time you have to work with a much broader range of harmonics, working with an EQ or something like that. And we talked about that when we did the equalization segment in this series. But you can do really fine harmonic work by doing very in-depth equalization work that moves around with the sound envelope. So you might want to review that, because basically it's the same concept that we won't get into much here because we went through it there when we were talking about equalization, that we're, sound sculpting with our equalizer. So you want to go back and watch those videos in sound sculpting with the equalization in this second Master Series, to refamiliarize yourself with that process. Second of all is that we can use a lot of the tools that we're going to work with in conjunction with our equalizer. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is that when we did our saturation work, a lot of times if you're adding even or odd harmonics and things like that, that it might take care of the problem. And after you get done, you might add a lot of even or odd harmonics and then have to go through and do some shaping with your equalizer afterwards, because if you add a bunch of odd harmonics, that they're going to add it evenly. It's not going to maybe be in the shape or in just one certain area where you want it. So you'll have to go back and work the equalization towards not affecting the areas you don't want it to, which is kind of a difficult process. But we will look at some ways to do that in this segment on working with harmonics. The next thing we want to talk about is the importance of some type of a channel splitter. In my DAW, I can split the channel right from the channel itself to have two different channels, or I can break multiple splits of channels on and on and on and on. So I can separate channels to have clean channel on one side that's right and left, and clean channel on the other side that's right and left, or channel split or frequency splits, and any number of possible, different frequency splits. And sometimes there's a lot of plugins that can do that. Or there's this plugin called Sigmod that can help you do that also. It can help split up the channel so that you can work whatever processors you're doing working on harmonics, because harmonics is a lot more delicate. When we're doing saturation, sometimes you might just be able to get away with that. But sometimes if you got a sound envelope that is, say, like a vocal, and it's like, maybe one or two harmonics in there, or maybe three or four harmonics that you're wanting to attenuate or boost to make it sound just right, that you're probably not going to get away with it doing it like we did when we did saturation. You're going to have to get in there and be much more detailed about how you deal with that situation, much more surgical. So these kind of plugins can really help. My go-to plugin is, I love my Trash 2, so I definitely recommend it as an investment if you're an audio engineer working in music production until they come up with something better. It's a very, we can work with even and odd harmonics, even and odd harmonics, saturation, using, you know, non-harmonic distortion where we want it, square clipping distortion, aggressive distortions whenever we're working on harmonics or saturations and things like that, and sculpting the sound. And it's a very useful tool that, you know, I don't know if they expect it to be that useful, but it is. Second of all, because you can really address those things and really get in there and shape with equalization and channel splitting and things like that what you're trying to accomplish, which we'll get into in the coming videos. Also, you know, these things like this, pitch shifters. Pitch shifters are the ultimate tool to do sound sculpting with harmonics, but they haven't perfected them real well yet. But we'll get into pitch shifting tools because you have pitch shifting abilities inside of your DAW also. So they are very valid tools. They would just it's a work in progress. Does that make sense? So it's something we will definitely be looking at. And next of all, we're getting into something like Melodyne. Something like Melodyne, it is a phenomenal tool. They're still developing it, but I mean, you have a harmonics area now that you can go in here and go from this fundamental, and you've got even and odd harmonics going across there. They're not seeming to be dealing a lot with non-harmonic distortion except for in the upper end, because there's a lot of it as a waveform tails off. A lot of times in a lot of sounds, there's a lot of harmonic distortion going off towards the end of it, not in the very beginning area of the wave file, the most important part of it. Like if you look at you know, like a square wave or a triangle wave, that there's only so many even and odd harmonics in it that are its components, and all that other stuff is what makes the sound natural, not, you know, robotic, like, you know, a wavetable synthesis waveform like that. But these tools are immensely valuable. They have some drawbacks to where really as the sound shifts pitch and it goes up or down, or you're singing like this, or you're singing like that, that the whole harmonic component can change. And it doesn't take much where I'm like, and then I want to be free. You know, it's going to change drastically between there, the way the harmonic envelope looks. So it makes it very difficult to work with it like that, unless you work like one note at a time all the way through there, which you're going to die in front of the mixing board like that until they really work on it to perfect it. But it is a very good tool, and it can help clean it up some, you know. Does that make sense? So you can, you know, any tool that can help you get a little bit done, and their tool will help you get a little more done, their tool will help you get a little more done. Oh yeah, dude, there we are. You know, they all help. So the better you get as an engineer, you will understand that. Not all tools are magical that'll get the whole thing done for you. Sometimes you'll get some of it done, and the other tool will get the other part of it done, and work them together, and I got that Lego put together, yeah. So, you know, it's harmonics are hugely important because the majority of the sound is harmonics in any sound that you have. You know, you have, you know, the basic even and odd harmonics, you have some non-harmonic distortion, and at different levels that are the basic components of the sound. And, you know, besides that, you know, noise and saturation that are those other elements, you know, along with frequency and volume modulations, make a sound natural. Does that make sense? Besides its ability to shift pitch up and down, which isn't modulations, it's, you know, going from A to C or whatever, something like that. You know, and there's slides and all kinds of stuff like that that are all inherent in it, because sometimes it's not always just A, B. It's like A, B, C, D, F. You know, some people that are really phenomenal vocalists, you just sit there and watch them for hours, the control they have of their abilities, and it can really make engineers cringe sometimes that are really serious audio engineers, like, hey, unless he's really good, bro, I'm not going to be able to fuss with that too much. I'll make a mess out of it. So I hope he's really good. You know, does that make sense? Because if they start really going, I mean, it makes it very difficult to try to repair stuff or enhance things without making a mess sometimes, if they're, you know, just slight variances in how they use their, you know, vocals, or, you know, virtuoso guitarists or sax players or anything. You know, the more control they have and the more little nuances they can do, make your job more difficult anytime you start messing with it. And harmonics is one of those areas, no doubt about it. So I want you to get out your DAW and open it up and get ready. We're going to have the same thing we had before. We are going to have that wave file that I had that's our set sound to kind of work off. And when we get done, we'll go through and add harmonics, and then we'll add the saturation we talked about, and then we'll add the noise we talked about to look at that. It's basically 4 tiers of things that we can do to really enhance the sound. And just remember, a lot of times it can be for really out front work. The more out front things are, the more you're going to work on them. The farther things get back in the mix, the more they get blended and washed away and and mixed together with other sounds. So it makes it, I'm not saying don't do a bad job on stuff farther back in the mix, but sometimes you find that you do too much surgical work on things way back in the mix and it's just not going to get heard. Does that make sense? So there's no point in trying to make something it's not going to get ever seen or heard. So keep that very debatable about when that is. The better of an engineer you get, the less time you will see that something's not going to be perceivable because you're going to be listening with your acute listening and so get ready. And in this coming segment, we're going to look at working on harmonics. It's a very difficult task, but we're going to tackle it so we can take our stuff to that next level as that next level master audio engineer. Peace, hope, love. I'll see you in the next video.